There's a comfortable lie you were taught from a young age, that being kind, approachable, emotionally open will get you far. But if you're honest with yourself, you've already realized the opposite. The more you explain yourself, the less you're respected. The more you react, the more you're manipulated. The more you chase after someone, the more you're ignored. This isn't bad luck. This is a lack of strategy. Reality doesn't reward intention, it rewards positioning. And nobody taught you that. Because this kind of knowledge isn't popular, it's dangerous. The truth is simple and uncomfortable. You are not weak by nature. You have been conditioned to act predictably. And everything that is predictable is controllable. While you continue reacting, explaining, seeking approval, other people are watching, calculating, and using this against you. Not explicitly, but silently. That's how the game works. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals. And if you still believe that being yourself without strategy is enough, then you still haven't understood the environment you're living in. But here's the point. This can change, quickly, because it's not about changing who you are, but about eliminating everything that weakens you, learning to speak less, react less, show less, think more, calculate more, position yourself better. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you free. Free from manipulation, free from neediness, free from the invisible mediocrity that holds most people captive. And from here, you'll understand exactly how to do this, not with pretty phrases, but with principles that, when applied, completely change how the world responds to you. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. He's already realized this, but perhaps hasn't accepted it yet. The more he talks, the less power he has. There's a very common illusion that being heard is a sign of strength, but in practice, it's the opposite. Those who talk too much reveal their intentions, disclose weaknesses, and expose strategies prematurely. It's like playing cards with an open hand and still thinking you're winning. Machiavelli already suggested indirectly that true power lies not in discourse, but in controlling perception. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, demands strategic silence. It's not about seeming intelligent, it's about being unpredictable. He's beginning to understand that the loudest man in the room isn't the most dangerous. He's the easiest to neutralize. Observe any environment, work, college, even a group of friends. There's always someone who talks too much. And curiously, they're the least respected. Real power is built on restraint, not exposure. And that completely changes the game. Now consider something practical. In a meeting, while everyone tries to prove their worth by talking non-stop, he does the opposite. He listens, he observes, he analyzes patterns, who seeks approval, who tries to dominate, who contradicts themselves. This kind of reading is pure gold. Decisions based on real human nature, not illusions, begin precisely there. While others want to be accepted, he is gathering information. And when he speaks, if he speaks, it's surgical. Few words, but with weight. This creates a powerful psychological effect. People begin to value every sentence he utters. It's as if silence builds invisible authority. And here's a subtle point. It's not about being cold for aesthetic reasons. It's about being strategic for survival. The end justifies the means when the means are self-control. He doesn't need to shout to be heard. He needs to choose the right moment to speak, and this, in the long run, completely transforms his position in any environment. But there's a difficult vice to break, the need to be understood all the time. He begins to realize that this need is a disguised weakness. Every time he feels the urge to over-explain, over-justify, over-prove, he is, without realizing it, asking for validation. And those who need validation are easily manipulated. Avoiding being hated doesn't mean constantly seeking approval. It means controlling how and when to expose oneself. The appearance of virtue is often built in silence, not in discourse. He begins to test this in his daily life. He answers less, observes more, cuts out unnecessary explanations. And something curious happens. People begin to project more onto him than he actually shows. That is power. Virtù and Fortuna meet when he learns to restrain himself, because those who speak less make fewer mistakes. Those who expose themselves less are less predictable, and those who are less predictable begin to become difficult to control. And perhaps that's exactly where the game starts to get interesting. He begins to realize something uncomfortable. It's not others who control him. It's his own reactions. Every irritation, every impulsive response, every change in tone of voice, all of this is an open map for anyone who wants to manipulate him. Reacting emotionally is like handing the steering wheel of one's own mind to someone else, and most don't even realize it. They believe they are asserting themselves, when in reality they are being led. Machiavelli already made it clear, even without using these words, that the calculated use of force begins within, not without. True strength is not exploding, it's not reacting, because whoever reacts responds to the other person's game. Whoever controls the reaction begins to dictate the rhythm of the game, and this completely changes the dynamics of any interaction. He begins to understand that maintaining composure is not weakness, it's mastery, it's pure strategy, it's silent power. Now consider something practical. Imagine someone trying to provoke you, at work, in an argument, even with a snide message. The common pattern is to react, respond immediately, raise your voice, try to win the moment. But he decides to do things differently. He pauses. He breathes. He doesn't respond immediately. This, in itself, breaks the expected pattern. The other person becomes uncomfortable. They begin to expose themselves more. They talk too much. They contradict themselves. And without realizing it, they lose the advantage. This is politics guided by reality, not by ideals. It's not about being polite or being calm. It's about emotional strategy. He begins to understand that the absence of reaction is more disturbing than any aggressive response. It's almost like a mirror. The other person begins to reveal themselves. And at that moment, he doesn't need to win the argument because he has already gained control of the situation. And control, in this game, is worth more than reason. But here comes the deepest and most difficult point. He realizes that the reaction doesn't arise in the moment. It comes from within. It comes from insecurities, pride, the need to prove something. And as long as these needs exist, he will remain vulnerable. Therefore, killing the reaction isn't just a technique, it's an internal process. It's learning not to need to win every argument, not to need to have the last word, not to need to be validated. This is liberating and at the same time frightening, because it requires abandoning the impulsive ego. But when he begins to dominate this, something changes. He becomes unpredictable. He no longer gives easy triggers. He doesn't engage in cheap emotional games. And whoever tries to manipulate him simply can't. Better to be feared than loved, perhaps, but more important than that is being indecipherable. Because whoever can't predict your reaction can't control you. And it is precisely at this point that a new layer of power emerges, even more silent and much more dangerous. He begins to understand an uncomfortable truth. It's not what happens to him that defines the game. It's how he reacts. And most of the time, he loses before he even realizes it, at the exact moment he reacts emotionally. Anger, anxiety, the need to respond immediately. All of this reveals a lack of control, and lack of control in the real world is an invitation to be manipulated. Machiavelli already made it clear, even if between the lines, that the man who does not master himself will never master the environment around him. Politics, guided by reality, not by ideals, demands coldness. Not that theatrical coldness, but an almost disconcerting calm. While others explode, he remains stable. While they provoke, he observes. And this creates enormous discomfort on the other side. Because whoever tries to emotionally affect someone and fails begins to expose themselves, and at that moment, without realizing it, they give away more than they should. The power begins to shift. Now consider something simple, yet brutally effective. Someone tries to provoke you at work, at college, or even at home. The natural instinct is to react, to defend yourself, justify yourself, rebut. But they start doing something different. They pause, breathe, look, and respond with neutrality, or don't respond at all. This small act completely changes the dynamic, because the other person expected an emotional reaction. When it doesn't come, the game breaks down. Decisions based on real human nature show that people depend on the reactions of others to validate themselves. Without a reaction, they become disorganized. It's like pulling the rug out from under someone in the middle of an attempted attack. And more, they realize that not every battle deserves a response. Some should be strategically ignored, others answered with surgical precision. The calculated use of force isn't about reacting to everything. It's about choosing when to act. And that requires discipline, because reacting is easy. What's difficult is restraining yourself when everything inside you wants to explode. Over time, he realizes something even deeper. Controlling his reaction isn't just about others. It's about himself. Every uncontrolled emotion is a vulnerability. Every impulse is an invisible leash, and the more leashes, the easier he becomes to control. Avoiding being hated in this context doesn't mean pleasing others. It means not giving away emotional power for free. He begins to test this in his daily life. Someone criticizes him, he doesn't explain himself. Someone provokes him, he doesn't engage. Someone tries to destabilize him, he remains solid. And something curious happens. People begin to hesitate before confronting him because they can't predict his reaction. And the unpredictable naturally generates respect, sometimes even fear. Better to be feared than loved, as long as you're not hated. And he begins to walk exactly that path, without needing to raise his voice, without needing to prove anything, just controlling what most people can't, their own reaction. And when he masters that, he realizes that the next step isn't just reacting less, it's becoming someone no one can read. He begins to realize that the biggest mistake isn't talking too much, it's being easy to understand. When someone can predict your movements, your emotions, your decisions, that person, in practice, already has an advantage over you. Being too transparent isn't a virtue, it's vulnerability. The appearance of virtue might even be useful, but complete exposure is dangerous. Machiavelli never taught naivete. On the contrary, he advocated decisions based on real human nature, and the reality is simple. People use what they know about you against you. Your patterns become predictions. Your weaknesses become tools. Your desires become levers. and he begins to understand that the more predictable he is, the easier it will be to control him. Becoming illegible isn't about being false. It's about not being decipherable. It's about creating layers. It's about never giving away the complete map, because whoever can't read you can't govern you. Now he begins to apply this in his daily life. Before, he explained his intentions. Now he executes. Before, he demonstrated everything he felt. Now he filters. It's not about completely shutting himself off, but about selecting what to show and when to show it. For example, in a competitive environment, he doesn't reveal all his plans. He doesn't comment on every step. He doesn't expose his ambitions to just anyone. He understands that information is power, and poorly distributed power weakens. The calculated use of force, in this case, is the calculated use of information. He begins to observe more than to speak, to listen more than to take a stand, to act more than to announce. And this creates a powerful psychological effect. People begin to try to guess what he's thinking, and when someone needs to guess, they're already at a disadvantage. Virtù and fortuna begin to play in favor of those who master the timing of their exposure. But the most interesting point comes now. By becoming illegible, he also becomes difficult to manipulate. Because manipulation depends on predictability. If someone knows what irritates you, they can provoke you. If they know what you want, they can seduce you. If they know what you're afraid of, they can control you. But when this information is unavailable, the game stalls. He begins to perceive this clearly. The less he reveals, the more freedom he has. Shedding his needs begins here, subtly, because often what he exposes are precisely his deficiencies. And deficiencies are the entry point for control. He begins to cut that off. Less explanation, less justification, less emotional exposure. And something curious happens. He begins to be respected, not for what he shows, but for what he hides. Because the unknown always seems bigger, more dangerous, more powerful. And when he truly understands this, he realizes that it's not enough to be difficult to read. It's also necessary to know when to disappear. He realizes something that contradicts everything he's ever been taught. Chasing after someone doesn't generate value. It diminishes it. There's a popular belief that persistence, always being available, responding quickly, demonstrating constant interest, all of this builds connection, but in practice, it builds dependence and reduces the perception of power. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows the opposite. That which is always available loses weight. That which can leave gains respect. Machiavelli understood this in the field of power, and this applies to any environment. It's not about rejecting people or opportunities. It's about not putting yourself in a position of need, because need is weakness. And weakness, inevitably, is exploited. He begins to realize that by strategically distancing himself, something changes. The other person's interest increases, attention grows, perceived value rises. Not because he spoke more, but because he appeared less. Now he tests this in the real world. Before, he responded immediately. Now he waits. Before, he was always available. Now he chooses when to be. In personal relationships, he stops chasing. In professional environments, he stops constantly offering himself, and something curious happens. People start seeking him out more, because human beings value what they don't completely control. This isn't emotional manipulation. It's an understanding of real human nature. Decisions based on this are more effective than any romantic ideal of always being present. He understands that distance isn't absence, it's positioning. It's saying without words that he's not dependent, and this completely alters the dynamic. Better to be feared than loved? Perhaps it's not about fear, but about not being easily disposable, because those who are always there are easily replaced. Those who know when to leave create scarcity, and scarcity generates value. But here's the deepest and hardest to accept point. Distancing oneself reveals who truly values one's presence. When one stops insisting, some disappear, others draw closer, and this acts as a brutal filter. One begins to see who was there out of convenience and who truly cares. This hurts, but it also liberates. Avoiding being hated doesn't mean pleasing everyone, but rather choosing where to invest one's energy. One begins to understand that energy is a limited resource, and distributing it indiscriminately is a form of self-sabotage. So one repositions oneself. Less available, more selective, more silent. And without needing to announce it, one begins to become more valued. Because those who don't pursue begin to be pursued. And when one masters this, one realizes that true power lies not in being present, but in knowing when to disappear. And perhaps at that moment, one begins to see people with different eyes, not to trust, but to understand how they truly function. He begins to see something that few dare to admit. People are not guided by words, they are guided by interests. The discourse is beautiful, but the real motivation is almost always silent. And those who ignore this are constantly surprised, betrayed, or manipulated. Machiavelli never romanticized human relationships. He understood that politics guided by reality, not by ideals, requires a cold reading of human behavior. It's not about paranoia, it's about lucidity. He realizes that blindly trusting is an elegant way to become vulnerable, because trust without analysis is surrendering power, and power, when poorly distributed, turns against you. So he changes his perspective. He stops listening only to what people say and begins to observe what they do. Inconsistencies, changes in behavior, hidden interests, all of this becomes information. And information, when well used, transforms into an advantage. In everyday life, this begins to manifest itself practically. He observes who changes their posture depending on who is present. Whoever speaks ill of someone will probably speak ill of him too. Whoever promises too much usually delivers less. He doesn't judge, he registers. It's almost like building a mental database. Decisions based on real human nature require this kind of attention. He begins to perceive patterns. Who acts for status? Who acts out of fear? Who acts for immediate gain? And when he understands someone's pattern, he understands how that person reacts under pressure, under opportunity, under risk. That is power. Not noisy power, but silent power, the kind that allows one to anticipate movements. The calculated use of force in this context is not direct confrontation. It's intelligent positioning. He doesn't need to fight with anyone. He just needs to know how each piece moves on the board, and from that, choose when to act and when to let others reveal themselves on their own. But here comes the most delicate and most strategic point. Not trusting anyone doesn't mean living in isolation. It means not becoming dependent on the loyalty of others. He understands that loyalty exists, but it's conditional. Circumstances change people, interests change decisions. Virtue and fortuna go hand in hand in this scenario. So he learns to trust processes, not promises, to validate actions, not words, and above all, not to expose himself more than necessary. He can relate, collaborate, even create alliances, but always consciously. Avoiding being hated remains important, but not at the cost of naivete. Because the man who understands everyone around him is rarely surprised, and the man who is rarely surprised begins to play a different game, a game where he doesn't react, he anticipates. And when he reaches that level, he realizes that it's not always about observing. Sometimes it's about saying absolutely nothing and letting silence do the work for him. He begins to understand that silence isn't emptiness, it's pressure. Most people speak to alleviate their own discomfort. They fill the space, respond quickly, over-explain. But those who master the game realize that silence creates tension, and this tension makes the other reveal themselves. Machiavelli, when speaking of the appearance of virtue and the control of perception, already pointed to this. What you show doesn't always strengthen you. Sometimes what you don't show is what weighs most heavily. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, teaches that silence is an active, not a passive, tool. He's not quiet because he doesn't know what to say. He's quiet because he's observing, analyzing, waiting for the right moment. And that changes everything, because while one speaks, the other gathers information. While one exposes themselves, the other understands. And whoever understands more plays better. Now he's starting to apply this to real-life situations. In a conversation, he doesn't rush to respond. In a negotiation, he doesn't fill the silence after a proposal. He lets the other person feel the weight of their own words. And what happens? The other person starts talking more, tries to justify themselves, over-explains, and without realizing it, gives away valuable information. This is classic. Those who can't stand silence surrender to it. Decisions based on real human nature show that silence is uncomfortable for those who are not in control, and that's exactly why it works. He realizes he doesn't need to exert direct pressure. He just needs to avoid easing the tension. The calculated use of force here is psychological. It's allowing the other person to put pressure on themselves. And this is extremely effective because it doesn't generate direct confrontation, but produces results without strain, without exposure, just control. But silence also reveals something internal. It demands security. Because remaining silent without justifying oneself, without explaining oneself, without trying to please, requires detachment from validation. And that's not easy. He begins to realize how many times he spoke only to be accepted, understood, approved. And now, by cutting that off, something changes. He becomes more respected, because those who speak little seem to think more. Those who explain less seem more secure. Is it better to be feared than loved? Perhaps silence doesn't generate fear, but it certainly generates respect. And respect in this game is worth more than sympathy. He begins to use silence as a positioning strategy. Not everything needs an answer. Not every provocation deserves a reaction. Not every question needs to be answered immediately. And by doing so, he becomes more difficult to access and more difficult to manipulate, because silence doesn't reveal weakness. It hides intention. And those who hide intention begin to move in a way that few can follow. And perhaps that's exactly when he realizes it's not enough not to speak. It's also necessary not to need anything. He begins to see something brutally honest. Every need he has is a lever that someone can pull. The need for approval, attention, answers, companionship, immediate money, recognition, all of this creates dependency. And dependency is the opposite of power. Machiavelli already suggested, in essence, that those who depend too much lose autonomy, because in the end, the game isn't about who is stronger, it's about who needs less. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that freedom isn't about doing what you want. It's about not being forced to accept anything, and this completely changes the perspective. He realizes that many bad decisions he made came from necessity. He accepted less than he deserved, tolerated what he shouldn't have, spoke when he should have remained silent, all because he needed something. And those who need too much negotiate poorly, always. Now he begins to make practical and uncomfortable adjustments. He reduces dependencies, financial, emotional, social. If before he accepted any opportunity for fear of losing, now he is selective. If before he sought constant validation, now he cuts that off. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent. It means not being a hostage. For example, he begins to build a financial reserve, even a small one. This already reduces the pressure to accept any offer. He begins to develop skills that increase his autonomy: strategic reading, communication, behavioral analysis. Books like The Prince by The Prince or The 48 Laws of Power by The 48 Laws of Power begin to make sense not as theory, but as practice. He understands that knowledge also reduces need, because whoever understands the game depends less on luck. Virtù and fortuna cease to be chance and become a matter of construction. But here's the most powerful and rarest point. When he truly doesn't need anything, he becomes impossible to manipulate. Because manipulation depends on desire. If someone knows what you want, they can offer it to you and control you. But when you're not desperate for anything, the game changes. Avoiding being hated remains important, but not at the cost of submission. He starts refusing what he would have previously accepted. He starts leaving situations that don't add value. He starts saying no without guilt. And that's frightening, because most people don't know how to deal with someone who doesn't need anything. Better to be feared than loved? Perhaps here, respect comes not from fear, but from independence, because someone who doesn't need anything doesn't beg, doesn't negotiate desperately, doesn't bend easily. And this kind of posture completely changes how the world responds to him. And when he reaches that level, he realizes that it's not enough to be independent. He also needs to know how to move without being seen. He begins to realize a classic mistake. Announcing plans is satisfying, but it weakens. When he says what he's going to do, he receives premature validation, and this validation replaces execution. It's a silent trap. Furthermore, by revealing his intentions, he gives others time to react, interfere, sabotage, or simply prepare. Machiavelli would never advise this. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, demands discretion, not out of fear, but out of strategy. The man who announces too much creates expectations. The man who executes in silence creates impact. And impact is what truly changes the perception of power. He begins to understand that value lies not in the promise, but in the surprise. Because when the result appears without warning, it carries more weight, more respect, more psychological effect. And this changes how he positions himself in the world. In everyday life, this translates into simple but rare behavior. He stops telling everything. He doesn't share every goal, every move, every ambition. He works in silence. He learns in silence. He evolves in silence. And when something materializes, it simply appears. This creates a stark contrast. People who talk a lot and deliver little begin to seem smaller next to him. Decisions based on real human nature show that human beings react more to what they see than to what they hear. So he focuses on the visible results. The calculated use of force here isn't confrontation. It's delayed impact. He lets time work in his favor. While others seek immediate recognition, he builds something that will be impossible to ignore later. This requires discipline, because the ego wants to speak, wants to show, wants to be recognized, but he learns to hold back. And this completely differentiates those who play short from those who play long. But there's an even deeper effect to all this. By moving in the dark, he becomes difficult to anticipate, and whoever cannot be anticipated is difficult to stop. Virtù and fortuna begin to align more predictably because he reduces external interference. Less outside opinion, less scattered energy, more focus, more execution. Avoiding being hated remains a strategic rule, but it doesn't mean seeking approval before acting. He acts first and lets others react later. And this completely changes the power dynamic. because whoever acts first with precision usually dictates the pace. And when he masters this, he realizes that it's not enough to act in the dark. He also needs to think far beyond the present, because whoever only sees the now plays too small a game. He begins to understand something that changes everything. Most people live reacting to the moment, while few build movements. There is a brutal difference between those who live in the now and those who envision the future. The first responds, the second anticipates. The first improvises, the second plans. And in the long run, those who plan always win. Machiavelli already pointed to this when speaking of virtù and fortuna. Luck favors the prepared, not those who are improvising. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, demands a long-term vision, because what seems advantageous now may be a mistake tomorrow. He begins to realize how many decisions he made thinking only about immediate relief, and how that exacted a price later. The calculated mind does not seek comfort, it seeks positioning, and that requires patience, because not every victory is quick, but every lasting victory was thought out before it happened. In daily life, this begins to translate into small changes, but with enormous impact. He stops responding to everything immediately. He stops making impulsive decisions. Before acting, he asks himself, will this help me in 6 months, in a year? If the answer is no, he reconsiders. This completely changes how he moves. For example, instead of accepting any opportunity that comes along, he evaluates the positioning it generates. Instead of spending time on immediate distractions, he invests in something that builds future advantage. Decisions based on real human nature show that most people trade long-term gains for immediate pleasure. And this creates a predictable and exploitable pattern. He begins to break free from this pattern. The calculated use of force here is not intensity, it's consistency. Small actions, repeated strategically, generate results that seem like luck to an outsider. But it's not luck. It's calculation. And here comes the most powerful point. The calculated mind doesn't just plan, it accepts waiting. And that's rare, because waiting requires trust in the process itself. It understands that not everything needs to happen now, that some moves need time to mature. Virtù and fortuna meet when it knows how to act and when it knows how to wait. Avoiding being hated remains relevant, but it cannot hinder necessary decisions. It begins to act with more composure, less anxiety, more precision, and this creates a curious effect. While others wear themselves out chasing quick results, it builds something that grows silently. And when that something appears, it seems inevitable, because it was planned. And when it reaches that level, it realizes that it's no longer about isolated techniques, it's about identity. Because playing long isn't a momentary choice, it's a way of being. He begins to realize that none of this works if used as an occasional tactic. It's not about acting cold at times, being strategic at others, and then reverting to the usual pattern. That doesn't sustain power. What sustains it is identity, because the world responds not to what he tries to appear to be, but to what he consistently is. Machiavelli didn't teach isolated tricks. He taught posture, a way of thinking, a way of existing. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, demands internal coherence. It's no use controlling your reaction today and losing tomorrow. It's no use being silent in public and impulsive in private. The real difference lies in consistency. He begins to understand that he wasn't made to live reacting, begging, explaining himself, adjusting all the time. That's survival, not dominance. And deep down, he's known this for a long time. He just never had the courage to admit it. Now he begins to reposition himself definitively. It's no longer about pleasing others. It's no longer about being accepted by everyone. It's no longer about chasing validation. He chooses a more solitary path, but infinitely more powerful. He applies everything. He speaks less, reacts less, exposes himself less, observes more, calculates more, depends less. And little by little, something changes. People begin to treat him differently, not necessarily with affection, but with respect. And respect in this game is worth more than approval. It's better to be feared than loved, as long as you know how to avoid being hated. He finds this balance. He doesn't need to be aggressive nor too distant. He's simply no longer accessible in the same way. He's no longer predictable. He's no longer manipulable, and this completely changes his position in any environment. But the final point, and the most important one, is this. He understands that this isn't a set of rules. It's a decision. The decision to stop living on autopilot, to stop accepting less than he deserves, to stop behaving like an ordinary person in a world where few have the courage to deviate from the norm. Virtù and fortuna cease to be concepts and become daily practice. The calculated use of force, silence, detachment, reading people, controlling reactions, all of this integrates, and he stops applying techniques. He becomes someone different. And when that happens, it's no longer about winning small disputes. It's about playing a game that most don't even realize exists. Now the question is no longer whether this works. It's whether you'll have the courage to apply it. Because understanding is comfortable. Applying is another story. It's in the silence that you'll realize how dependent you were on being heard. It's by not reacting that you'll feel how much impulse controlled you. It's by distancing yourself that you'll discover who really stays. And that isn't pretty. It isn't easy, but it's real. And reality doesn't negotiate with those who insist on living on autopilot. So let me ask you directly, how many decisions in your life today are still guided by necessity? How many times have you spoken too much, overreacted, exposed yourself too much, and paid the price later? How many times have you sought approval and lost respect? If you're honest, you know the answer. And you also know that continuing as you are isn't an option, it's a sentence. Because the world isn't going to change to your advantage. Either you understand the game, or you'll continue to be a pawn in it. Now, the choice is simple, but not easy. Will you continue to be predictable, or will you become someone no one can read? Will you continue reacting, or will you start taking control? Will you continue chasing after things, or will you make them come to you? Because in the end, it's not about technique, it's about identity. And identity is built on daily, silent, invisible decisions. That's where the game is won. If this type of content resonated with you, then you've already understood more than most, but understanding isn't enough. You need to delve deeper. So subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here we don't talk about what's comfortable. We talk about what works. And if any of this bothered you, great. That's exactly where the change begins.